Whenever you think about the highest paying jobs in the world, you probably think of CEOs or Hollywood actors. These guys make tens of millions of dollars a year, and really the only way to surpass their incomes would be to start your own business. But there's actually a job that pays much higher than these, which is being a hedge fund manager. The top hedge fund managers in the world actually make several $billions a year, but a high-level hedge fund manager still often makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, with the top 25 hedge fund managers averaging $615 million in 2017. Granted, these guys are the 25 best hedge fund managers in the world, but the point still holds as they make far more than the top Fortune 500 CEOs who didn't create their company. For instance, Tim Cook made $15.7 million, Satya Nadella earned $42.9 million, Jamie Dimon made $31.5 million, and so on and so forth. The only CEO that even comes close to hedge fund managers is Sundar Pichai, who makes over $200 million a year. So what do hedge fund managers even do, and why are they paid so much? But before we jump into that, let's get a better understanding of what a hedge fund actually is. So a hedge fund is simply a pool of money that has been created using contributions from several wealthy investors and or institutions. This pool of money is then invested by the hedge fund manager and his team into various assets to try to make a return. The reason these pools of money are called hedge funds is that originally, hedge funds would be structured in a way to hold both long-term and short-term investments. This way, investors are hedged to reduce risk. In other words, even if the long-term investments performed poorly, the short-term investments could provide a return and vice versa. Us average people also have a similar option to invest in, which are mutual funds. The premise of mutual funds is nearly identical, except they don't have minimum salary and net worth requirements for investors like hedge funds do. So basically, hedge funds are just mutual funds for rich people. But the barrier for entry into the average hedge fund isn't too extreme. Generally, hedge funds will require an income of $200,000 to $300,000 with a net worth of at least $1 million. While a lofty requirement, with the right job and good saving and investment habits, it's not too far off for the average person. However, the top hedge funds are only accessible to a handful of people along with big institutions. Taking a look at Bridgewater Associates, which is the largest hedge fund in the world with $160 billion in assets under management, led by the famous Ray Dalio, requires investors to have at least $7.5 billion in investable assets to participate in the fund. So clearly, top hedge funds take in tens of billions of dollars, but how much of this actually goes to hedge fund managers? Well, the general rule for hedge fund managers is the standard 2 and 20. This means that hedge fund managers get 2% of the net worth of the assets per year, along with 20% of the returns they produce above a certain threshold. You can see how this could lead to a lot of money very quickly. Even if you're controlling a small hedge fund of $100 million, just by meeting the return threshold, you'll be making $2 million a year. If you move up to managing a mid-level fund of a few $100 million or a few billion, you'd be making $10 to $30 million a year, which is the average amount top CEOs make. And though it's hard to become a hedge fund manager, it is significantly easier than becoming a CEO. There are only 500 Fortune 500 CEOs in the world, but there are 10,000 to 15,000 hedge funds to manage. As a result, being a hedge fund manager is much more attainable than many other top-paying jobs. So, how exactly does one even go about becoming a hedge fund manager? Well, if you have some sort of a large-scale reputation in the financial world, you can open your own hedge fund, but that would be opening a business rather than getting a job. So, if you pursued the job pathway, you would probably start off with a degree in finance from a reputable college, followed up by a couple of years of experience as a financial analyst. Given good performance, you can generally land a job as a hedge fund analyst in your late 20s, which already pays $175,000 to $200,000. With 5 to 7 years of experience, you can jump up to being a senior analyst and make $500,000 to $1 million a year. And finally, with 7 to 10 years of experience as a senior analyst, you can usually become a portfolio manager who makes several $1 million a year. This is the only job in the world that allows you to start off with a college degree and quite reasonably work your way up to millions of dollars a year by the time you're 50. With that being said, aside from the money, this is a pretty terrible job. Hedge fund managers generally work at least 70 hours a week, and as you're working up the corporate ladder, you'll often find yourself working over 90 hours. Not only are the hours extremely long, but the hours will be extremely stressful as well. The financial industry is one of the most stressful industries, as you can imagine, given the large amounts of money and high levels of return they're targeting. But that's just the reality of any high-paying job, and that's why hedge fund managers make so much. If you thought this video explained how hedge funds work well, then make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more questions just like this one logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.